The office is almost empty. The cleaning crew has already passed through. Most of the lights are off, and somewhere down the hall, a printer makes the only sound left in the building. At one desk, someone is still working. They are fixing a problem they did not create, updating a spreadsheet no one else understands, and finishing a presentation for a meeting where someone else will probably speak. On the screen, an email from management thanks the team for its continued dedication. This employee has spent years becoming the person everyone depends on. They know the undocumented systems. They remember the clients everyone else forgot. They notice small problems before those problems become expensive disasters. They rarely talk about what they do. They were taught that real competence does not need advertising. Then, the next morning, they learned that the promotion went to someone newer, someone louder, someone who knows how to enter the right conversations, repeat the right achievements, and make sure the right people remember their name. Or maybe the message is different. A restructuring, a role eliminated, a pension changed, a department reduced after years of sacrifice. You might expect anger, but the first reaction is often strangely practical. Save the files, update the resume, make a dry joke, keep moving. Because for many Gen X adults, disappointment was not something you performed in public. You handled it. You adjusted. You did what needed to be done, but something deeper may have broken in that moment. Not only trust in a company, trust in an equation. The quiet belief that if you worked hard enough, became useful enough, and avoided becoming a burden, you would eventually be safe. For years, that equation may have worked. You solved a problem and things improved. You learned a skill and you became more valuable. You showed up when others did not, and people relied on you. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a sense of personal control, the belief that your actions can influence what happens next. And that belief is not foolish. It can create resilience. When you repeatedly survive difficulty through effort, you develop real confidence. You learn that panic is less useful than action. You discover that you can figure things out, even when no one gives you instructions. That is one of the strongest parts of the Gen X work ethic. But a useful belief can slowly become something else. It can become an identity. You are no longer simply a person who works hard. You become the person who can handle everything. The one who does not need much. The one who stays calm. The one who knows how to fix it. And once competence becomes your safest source of value, rest starts to feel suspicious. A slow day feels unproductive. Asking for help feels riskier than carrying too much. Delegating feels less efficient than doing it yourself. Even praise can feel uncomfortable because you may have learned to want recognition without appearing to need it. So, you tell yourself that the work should speak for itself, that good leaders will notice, that loyalty will eventually be returned. And without realizing it, you begin enforcing the system's demands from inside your own mind. No manager has to tell you to stay late. You already know the rule. Be useful. Do not complain. Do not become replaceable. Then the equation breaks. You train the new manager, and the new manager receives the authority. You save the client, and someone else presents the result. You take on more responsibility, but the title never changes. You remain loyal through difficult years, and the company eliminates your position in a decision made 3 states away by people who have never met you. The pain is not only that something unfair happened. The deeper disorientation comes from realizing that effort and outcome were never connected as tightly as you believed. Hard work mattered, but so did visibility, relationships, timing, economic conditions, office politics, the ability to explain your value to people who were too far away to witness it. That realization can feel threatening because simple rules create emotional safety. Work hard and you will succeed is not always accurate, but it gives the world a structure. It tells you what to do. A complicated truth is harder to live with. You can do everything right and still lose. You can be highly competent and still be overlooked. You can be loyal to an institution that is incapable of being loyal to you. People often tolerate difficulty better than unpredictability. A demanding system can still feel manageable when the rules seem stable. But when the rules change after years of compliance, the problem is no longer exhaustion. It is psychological betrayal. And this is where Gen X did not respond in one single way. For some, the collapse of the old bargain created a healthier kind of independence. They stopped assuming that institutions would take care of them. They began documenting their contributions instead of waiting to be discovered. They learned to negotiate. They built identities that did not depend entirely on a job title. They became more willing to leave environments that demanded loyalty without offering reciprocity. Their independence became flexible. They could rely on themselves without refusing support. They could work hard without treating exhaustion as proof of character. But for others, independence became defensive. They stopped trusting promises. They prepared for every possible failure. They kept copies of every email, every document, every performance review. They developed backup plans for their backup plans. They told younger coworkers not to get emotionally invested. They dismissed enthusiasm as naivete. They became proud of expecting nothing. From the outside, both responses can look similar. Both people may say, "I learned not to depend on anyone." But one is describing freedom. The other may be describing permanent vigilance. That difference matters because after being disappointed enough times, a person may begin to devalue the very thing they once wanted. Recognition is stupid. Titles are meaningless. Company loyalty is for suckers. Praise does not matter. Sometimes that is genuine wisdom. Sometimes it is emotional protection. When something repeatedly hurts us, we may decide it was never important. That is easier than admitting that it mattered and was withheld. You can see the contradiction in small moments. Someone jokes that awards are meaningless, then becomes unusually irritated when a less experienced colleague receives public recognition. They insist they do not care about promotions, but they remember every time their contribution was ignored. They say they prefer doing everything alone, while quietly resenting that everything depends on them. So the more personal question is not simply, do you need validation? It is this: did you stop needing recognition? Or did you stop allowing yourself to expect it? That question reaches beyond work, because once you learn that depending on an institution can be dangerous, you may start applying the same lesson everywhere. You avoid asking for help. You anticipate disappointment. You control details other people barely notice. You feel calmer when you are responsible for everything, even though being responsible for everything is exhausting. Control becomes a way to regulate uncertainty. If you plan enough, prepare enough, and need little enough, perhaps nothing can catch you off guard again. But a life organized around avoiding surprise is not always the same as a free life. Sometimes resilience becomes over-control. Sometimes self-reliance becomes isolation with better branding. And sometimes, "I can handle it" really means, "I do not trust what will happen if I cannot." The answer is not to abandon hard work. Effort still builds skill. It creates options. It can express discipline, pride, meaning, and care. But effort becomes psychologically dangerous when it is asked to do something it can never do. It cannot guarantee fairness. It cannot force an organization to recognize you. It cannot make belonging permanent. It cannot make you impossible to discard. And it cannot remove uncertainty from life. A healthier shift begins when effort stops being an unconscious bargain. You can still do excellent work, but you document it. You communicate value instead of assuming someone will notice. You build relationships without treating politics as beneath you. You rest without interpreting rest as failure. You ask direct questions about compensation, opportunity, and expectations. And when a system repeatedly extracts your effort without reciprocity, leaving may become the more disciplined choice. Now return to that empty office. The unfinished presentation is still on the screen. The building is still quiet. The employee is still capable of fixing the problem. But staying late no longer automatically means dedication. It may mean fear. It may mean identity. It may mean an old attempt to remain indispensable in a world that has already shown that no one is indispensable. Perhaps the most painful realization was never simply that hard work was not enough. It was that usefulness could not guarantee safety. And after that realization, every person faces a crossroads. You can build a freer definition of success, or you can become more efficient at expecting nothing. The goal is not to become cynical. It is to stop asking effort to prove that you deserve security, recognition, or a place in the world. Because your work can reveal your character, but it should never be required to justify your existence. If this felt familiar, share your experience in the comments and subscribe for more explorations of the psychology behind the way we live and work.